Herb, where does Tim Anderson rank among the faces of your?
He should
YORE.
Yeah.
Your.
Yeah. Okay.
He should rank number one because he was drafted as a White Sox, cultivated by them, brought up, and has become a superstar under their watch. But as we have 79, he's done more in his career, Jose Abreu, than Tim Anderson
His
has
stats
done.
are better.
Yes.
But is that my point? Is that's not the end all be all,
It's
right?
not.
Right.
Tim is of the White Sox. He moved his family into the city of Chicago. I don't think they're there now, but he embraced the South Side. He immediately, when he got here, he's like, I'm here. I'm about this, and I'm gonna, be the South Side. I'm gonna be the representative of the team. As I said before, he means more to the White Sox than he does anywhere else. And after this, other people might think differently, but I would be very crestfallen if Tim Anderson ever left the White Sox, kind of like I was crestfallen when Jose Abreu left, but I think to a greater degree because of the off-the-field stuff with Tim, with how he volunteers his time, and he represents something different for the African-American players, which are few and far between. And when you have a superstar like that, you want to cling on to him, especially when he's your superstar. And that's what Tim is showing that he is right now. So I would say that in my mind, as far as the whole package, yeah, Tim is probably more valuable than what Jose Abreu is to the team and the community. But Jose Abreu, I think, hurt me a little bit more because it's already happened. If Tim happens, man, especially if it goes to the Yankees, that would hurt my heart really badly because I know he's not of that. He's Chicago to the death.
Are we including Frank, Paul?
Well, yeah,
Burley?
I mean,
Okay.
I kind of was, and I mean, listen, I think that everybody knows that baseball is a business that these guys go where they can, maximize their earnings, and that's their right, and that's fine. But we saw Frank Thomas play for another team. We saw Mark Burley play for another team. We saw Harold Baines play for another team. We saw Ozzie Guillen go down and play for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, didn't we? But I guess the point.
Did we?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
No, it's just we.
Oh yeah. You were too young to see
Chicago.
that.
Yeah, right.
You weren't old enough to see
Right.
that.
But I guess and now we see Jose Abreu going and playing in Houston. But when you talk about it from that business standpoint, it's not, will the White Sox give the contract that allows them to have Tim's production on the team, kind of yada yada. It's, can the White Sox afford to be without Tim Anderson? When we get to the end of when Tim hits free agency, can the White Sox afford to not have him on their team not just from a baseball standpoint, but from a PR standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a franchise standpoint? He seems to be the guy that they cannot let go.
Do you think will it be harder if they let him go, the response from the fans, than what Jose Abreu was? Because I think
it should
we were kind of used to it. We were like, okay, Jose's not going to come back. And when it happened, still, it was like, fuck, I thought they were going to work out a way. And when Tim leaves, if he leaves, I think, like you, that, fans are going to be pissed. And because he's going to be in his prime, like just the end of his prime, I think 31, 32, but he's still got good baseball left in him. We saw what he did last night. Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for fans to swallow a Tim Anderson, even if Colson Montgomery is a champion. It's like you can have them both. You can have Colson at third or shortstop, wherever you need him to be, and Tim Manning shortstop until he can't do it anymore. And by that time, I'm sure he can do second base or DH, whatever.
And here's the thing, too. Listen, I people care so much about what the budget is, what the free agent spending is. It is part of a plan. When you make a plan for multiple years, for years into the future, like the White Sox are doing, like teams across the league are doing, it is part of a plan to budget for years down the road. And I think right now, the people in the White Sox front office can look at the markets, can look at Tim Anderson and say, in 2 years, we're going to need to budget that amount of money. And I think they can plan for that now. And I'm not saying you're mortgaging I don't even know what that would mean, mortgaging the present to pay for the future. That doesn't really make any sense. But you're not sacrificing now to pay for later because TA is going to get a raise. I don't think that they're doing that. But I don't think that they are just sitting there waiting and being like, well, we'll see what happens when that year comes around. I think they got to know that they can budget for that now and that they can do their best to ensure that guy doesn't leave, because like I said, I don't know if they can afford from a team identity standpoint him going to play for another team.
I would thinking about Burley. I love Mark Burley. Mm-hmm. He's a left-hander, very unique player. Never gave off like he's the White Sox. Paul Konerko was cool, and I think that he was around for a long time, but like, I don't know. Like
he was on 2 teams before the White Sox.
Yes. And then Frank Thomas, like, I don't know. Frank always felt like it was more about Frank and less about the team. And I don't know. That's a very warped view because I didn't see. I was very young when I saw Tim.
You are not wrong.
Frank.
That's the perception that was out there that Frank is about Frank, not necessarily the White Sox. Which, he was drafted to the team. He didn't choose the White Sox.
I think Tim and Jose probably are neck and neck, at least for who defined or kind of meant the most to the franchise, just with Jose's connection to Cuba and then how we saw just all of the international flair for this team over the past couple of years, and Yasmani Grandal coming over and being like, no, we need to win one for Jose. I thought that was really kind of a defining moment for him and his leadership. But I think Tim also, just by the way that he is, the swagger, the way that he kind of really brought back baseball, I think, in 2019. I don't think really people were paying attention to the White Sox in 2019, and then that bat flip happened, and then people started paying attention, and I feel like people knew who these White Sox were because Tim Anderson made them, put them on the map, really.
And that mindset or that idea can come back March 30th.
Oh, 100%,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they were the Tim Anderson White Sox in 2019, 2020, 2021, and then last year they just weren't anybody's White Sox because of how things went. But that they don't need to completely craft a new identity. They can go back and get that same one that Tim Anderson gave them in 2019. They just need the wins to go along with it.
Yeah, and he's still great. Like, that's the thing is, I know he's 29 right now, and there's still a little bit of concern at what he might be at 32. But even then, we saw Trey Turner get a huge contract for $300 million. A part of like his pluses is that his speed's really never dropped off. He's consistently stayed fast, and that's kind of the signs of, that's when you're going to start deteriorating. So giving a guy, $300 million who really hasn't deteriorated speed-wise, like, it's pretty good. It's a smart deal. Tim, his actual sprint speed percentiles have gone down. In 2019, 87 percentile. 2020, 92 percentile. Do you think he had a lot in the tank for that one?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was burning. But then in 2021, 74 percentile. In 2022, 76 percentile. However, we already showed the stats about a pre- and post-groin injury for 2022. He had a leg injury as well in 2021, right? Was it another groin injury? That Tampa?
When he did that throw, he got hurt.
Wasn't it more hip? I don't remember what it was exactly because Tony just kept calling it sore legs. So I don't remember what it was specifically. But
that's the lower half.
It was the lower body injury.
We can make it generic. But still.
Well, and remember the ankle roll at Fenway Park.
Yes.
Yeah.
Early in the season.
2019, right?
Was it?
Yeah, that was 2019.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
That's my bad on that. I thought it was
when it was
2021.
When they were playing in the middle of Boston Harbor out there in the rainy Fenway Park.
Yeah, I remember. I thought that was 2021 for some reason.
I don't know if they had StatCast on the thing, but whatever's was ailing him last year is gone.
Well,
he was absolutely flying.
So
like I've never seen him before.
But that's the thing. So even though he's 76 percentile and 74 percentile in 2022 and 2021, there's this thing called bolts on StatCast, and a bolt is any run above 30 feet per second, and that's like elite speed. If you're above 30 feet per second, you're the fastest of fast. You're 99th percentile. Since 2021, where he's had several leg injuries, he's 12th in MLB in bolts, 62. Up there with Jazz, a little bit above Andres Jimenez. A little bit above him is Tyler O'Neill and Julio Rodriguez. Obviously, Julio Rodriguez is very fast,
and young
because he just played one season and already has 75 bolts. But he's could be top 10-ish in speed. I don't really think it's declining, and if you're seeing how fast he is yesterday, I think it's showing that he's healthy, which is huge for the 2023 White Sox. And if he's healthy and he's ready to go, this team will win at least 81 games again because he is that straw that stirs the drink, and I don't think that's BS. I mean, they are good when he plays.
And I get it, Christian. Paul Konerko meant a lot to this organization, but the fact that he was not drafted by this organization, was traded for in the middle of, I think it was 1999, I believe it was, for Mike Cameron. Yes, he had a great White Sox career, and he ended with the White Sox. But I don't think of him as, man, we need Paul Konerko to be this, that, and the other. He meant a lot to the White Sox. Tim Anderson, if he leaves at 32 years old, will cause a ripple effect of this team, like of the fans. They'll be like, what the hell is going on? I don't want him to get to that point where he has 29 other teams bidding for his services. I want the White Sox to find a way. And I know Tim probably wants to get to that actual money, because you saw earlier in this offseason when the deals were getting signed, eye emojis. Oh, okay. Shortstop's getting paid. Cool. It's time for me to get paid. Time for me to get break off. You would see Tim with his vague tweets and stuff. I know what they mean. Tim wants to get paid.
One wasn't that vague. I think the reason why Henry said I was worried was because he tweeted at one point, New York state of mind.
He probably just went to New York.
Maybe. And as he said, don't read into his tweets. They're just for him. Mm-hmm. Damn. I want to ask you guys, or at least Herb, if you remember, like, what was it like for Paul Konerko? Because he was here until the end. But, like, I know with Mark Burley, there were so many times where he might not have been a White Sox. He continued his career in 2007, but there was worries that he might be dealt. Yeah. We obviously see Jose Abreu, where if he doesn't have the qualifying offer in 2019, he might not be a White Sox for life. And Jerry Reinsdorf says White Sox for life, and that's not true.
Well, I mean, Herb, you know the answer to that question. I mean, and Rick brought it up a lot when we were the first time we were going through all of this with Jose going to free agency, and talking about signing guys to extensions in the middle of the year, all that kind of business. Paul Konerko went to free agency, and it took pretty long into the offseason, if memory serves, to re-up him. So there was a time where the face of the franchise went to free agency, tested those waters, and ended up coming back. I see that being far more likely in Tim Anderson's case than he signs a contract extension before he heads to free agency, unless they just decide to blow him away.
And that was like 05, 06, too. It was right in the height of Paul Konerko being a champion, where, is he coming back? Oh, no, we're going to lose Paulie Konerko? Uh-oh, troubles. If that would have been the equivalent, I think Paul might have been a little longer in tooth, or just the same age as Tim at the time, but he was still hitting home runs at a prodigious clip. But at the end of his White Sox career, he had 2 horrendous years at the end of his career. It was obvious that he never took steroids. He was aging gracefully. He was aging like a real Major League Baseball player is supposed to do. They had his final game, which
he aged like Crash Davis.
Yeah, like we thought, this is his last game, and then he came back for the next year, and he was not that great. It was pretty much like a curtain call for Paul Konerko at the end of his career. But he aged like he's supposed to. I think the fact that he came back was great. Mark Burley, I think that was a choice between him and John Danks, and the White Sox chose the younger John Danks mistakenly instead of Mark Burley. I think deals were similar. It was like a 4-year $50 million for Danks and a 4-year $56 million for Mark Burley.
Yeah,
just so he could have the same the jersey number. Yeah,
exactly.
This is from Wikipedia, so I don't know how accurate it is or who wrote it, but following the 2005 World Series, Konerko signed a 5-year, $60 million deal with the White Sox, November 30th, 2005. Too late into
2005 was different. The baseball calendar worked a little different than it does now,
and also scary too. Yeah, you didn't want other teams bidding on. I heard like Boston was there.
Yeah, after reportedly turning down lucrative offers from Los Angeles Angels and Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore.
I don't know
okay,
if Boston was in there too.
Yeah, it was scary that he was not going to be there, but they pony up, and I think part of it he got re-signed because he gave the ball to Jerry Reinsdorf. That's part of the thing, like Jerry Reinsdorf with loyalty. The fact that he presented the game-winning ball to Jerry Reinsdorf probably went into it, and the number was right, too. Paul wasn't asking him to break the bank, which he could have. He was a big-time player at that time, and it would have been hurt for the White Sox to lose him, even though they traded to get Jim Thome the next year, or that same offseason.
Yeah. Did we learn anything from Jose, though? Is that kind of the same thing that they try to, hey, go see what you can get, and then they got outbid? And do you really want that to happen with Tim Anderson? Tim Anderson's out in the free agent market, and, the Yankees do offer him $50 more million than you wanted to sign.
I mean, Jose Abreu was a free agent for what, like a week?
Right.
Last time, yeah.
Well, my point. You're talking about
he turned down the qualifying offer, and he was actually a free agent for very small amount of time. But then, technically, he could have fielded other offers if he wanted to hear what they were going to be. But I think what happened with Jose shows you that the White Sox will. Again, Rick Hahn has said this whole time, to the start of this rebuilding process, that they keep everything on the table, that they keep all options on the table. And as surprising as it was to her, both you and myself, one of those options that they kept on the table was letting Jose Abreu go to another team. And that's the way it played out. And I think that they look at all options, that they look at all angles, and certainly there's business, monetary element that comes into this. They needed to try to afford what they wanted to do this offseason. They went and gave out the biggest free agent contract in team history to Andrew Benintendi. They chose to allocate their resources there rather than with Jose Abreu. So it seems to me that like Jose Abreu going to Houston shows you that no matter how much you're valued by this organization, I don't think that outcome should show you that they were like mad at him or didn't like him anymore or anything like that. It just goes to show you that it doesn't mean that you're going to be in that same jersey forever. Now, I think there's a difference with Tim Anderson. I think there's a difference in the fact that everything Jose Abreu said to the media was through a translator, and that's no fault of his. I don't blame him for doing that, but people ingest that in a different way than they do somebody speaking in the language that they speak. Tim Anderson spoke in English, and his words got turned into the slogan for the entire team. It got turned into the marketing slogan for the entire organization, right? So I think that TA is just more. He's just more from a PR standpoint, from an unquantifiable baseball standpoint, right? There's no stat for marketability. Seriously, there's no stat for that, and I think there's no stat for everything that Abreu did in that clubhouse to the guys that he brought up through this game. There's no stat for how much TA means to the organization in terms of what they stand for, right? And again, Abreu's not playing for this team anymore. I think it's surprising, and I think that you could say a lot of the same things that I'm saying now about TA about Jose Abreu. But I think they got to really, really make sure that they try to keep Tim Anderson on the south side.
And the difference between the two players and the positions they play, first base, it's very important, but you can have another first baseman, as they did with Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets available to play first base. And so letting Jose Abreu go calculated hurts everybody, but it's not going to hurt. Tim plays a much more valuable spot in both leading off and shortstop. And I think when he does leave, or if he does leave, like, there will be a lot of teams available to go and get him. And so I don't think the White Sox will be like, oh, man, can we afford to lose him? Like somebody says, 2 or 3 Benintendis, the contract will be. I don't know if it'll be that much because I don't know if Tim will be going against the competition that was this offseason where the numbers drove each other up with the...
Contract values don't go down, though, Herb.
They don't, but with the Bogarts and the Trey Turner and the Correa and those Dansby Swanson, I think they were all competing against each other. One was signing and the other one's. I don't know who's going to be leaving the same year Tim's leaving. So I think the value of Tim's actual position and his leadership and what he means to the city is a little bit different than Jose Abreu. And so I think that's what's going to cause the White Sox a little pause where, like, are we really guaranteed to give Colston Montgomery this job? A person that might not have played in the major leagues before that at a premium position like shortstop. So I hope that goes into the calculus for the White Sox, not knowing who's going to be behind Tim Anderson, not just the player, but replacing him. I think you've made a great point that Jose Abreu, while great, maybe can be made up in the aggregate. It's going to be tough to be made up in the aggregate with Tim Anderson for all the stuff that he does.
There's not a lot of athletes like Tim Anderson. That's 100% true. I hope Tim Anderson is different. I don't think this organization will be different. I think it will still be the same owner. I still think it will be the same duo of power in Kenny and Rick. And we see how that duo has operated with faces of the franchise. Unless it is a good deal for them, it doesn't seem like it is necessary for them to go set the market on any player. Mm-hmm. I hope Tim Anderson is different because of all the things that you said, all that he is on the field, off the field. I think that he is completely different. But I'm not going to get my hopes up just because I'm not controlling that checkbook. I'm not controlling those purse strings. And at the end of the day, it is business. And I know that they're going to do what's best for business for them. And typically that doesn't mean $200 million.
But you got to think about this too.
$175 million.
We're talking about the World Baseball Classic. Unfortunately for Jose Abreu, never participated in it. Didn't get his global brand out there.
Didn't he?
Does he come back out there? I mean, not as a Major League Baseball player. He might have did it before he fled Cuba. But he performed. in the corn game. He performed in both playoff series he's been in. He performed in the World Baseball Classic. When the lights shine the brightest, when he was getting called Jackie, he performed in the Boogie Down Bronx. People see that. The pressure doesn't get to the cat. It doesn't get to him, and so they're like, you know what? He's a different guy. He's not just the numbers that he accumulates, but when it's time to come up for his team, he does.
Well, you talk about business. TA's the guy you put on the billboard. Mm-hmm. TA's the guy getting people to buy tickets. I mean,
I think he had the most sold Team USA jersey. I could be wrong on that.
I'm not. I don't want to. Everything we've heard about Andrew Benintendi is he's a great guy in the clubhouse and been a very nice guy and a very good baseball player. We know that. Andrew Benintendi's not going to be in the commercial. Andrew Benintendi's not going on the billboard, and he's the highest paid free agent in franchise history.
Does that matter though? I mean,
it's an entertainment business.
But it is an entertainment business.
You don't think
100%? But
you don't think people are buying a ticket to go see if Tim Anderson can flip his bat?
I think that if it's between Tim Anderson and a 78 win team and a 98 win team with nobodies, I think they're going to see the 90 win team. So I just don't know what it depends. It depends on Tim Anderson and what they think.
Maybe I think you take your kids to see the show.
Yeah. Me too.
You're not wrong. I like Tim Anderson. I'm not trying to say anything bad about Tim Anderson. I'm just saying I don't think that's how 35th and Shields operates.
I hope
it is. I hope I'm wrong too. Like I said, I hope Tim Anderson is different. He deserves to be different because he is entertaining like that.
Well, and if I think too, this conversation would be a lot different if Jose Abreu was still on this team. Yep. Because then you could really play up that whole loyalty, that angle, that whole he'll never wear another uniform angle kind of thing.
They're only loyal if it's good for the purse.
I don't think that idea has been shattered because Jose Abreu is on another team, but it speaks a lot. It was a loud comment.
I don't know. Like Leury Garcia signed for $15 million, and he is not even an average utility player, and yet they are going out and matching whatever the Pirates were because I just think it was under $20 million, and of course they're not going to get beaten by $1 million or $2 million by the Pirates. But when you're just getting outspent by the Houston Astros, who I think wanted to spend $40 million more than you on Jose Abreu, I don't think they wanted to give him 2 years. Like, I get why the deal was made, but like you just went from a great first baseman to right now an average first baseman. We hope Andrew Vaughn can be great. There's a lot of signs that he could be great, but I mean, even to keep your team just as good as it was, you couldn't spend that extra money to make sure that Jose Abreu was there, your best player from last year. I mean, that's the point that I've been hearing from you guys is that he's their best player, and they let him walk, and this is their window. So it's an odd choice.
As with the Mike Clevenger move, it was a calculated risk that they're willing to take to see what Andrew Vaughn can do in his greatest, putting no more excuses on Andrew Vaughn. First base, you're here. Let's see you be Andrew Vaughn, the third pick in the draft that year. Let's see if Sean's right with his great illustrations. I do like your illustrations on Twitter about Andrew Vaughn.
I thought for a second you had started drawing.
No.
Oh, you don't want to see me drawing.
This man is just out here. He's an Andrew Vaughn truther.